you guys doing? This one is called From Fired to Funded, The Power of the Pivot, presented by SPILL. We've got Alphonzo Terrell, the CEO and co-founder of SPILL. Kori Hale, the CEO and co-founder of CultureBanx. And last but certainly not least, the Reverend Danté, the senior pastor at First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. As you heard, I am the Senior Vice President and Director of DE&I at Fleischman Hillard, a global communications and marketing agency. I play a dual role here as our company is one of the sponsors of Inkwell's programming with Fleischman Hillard, but I'm also a volunteer, a CCDC ambassador alumni, and I have the honor of working with the Adrian C. Smith in 2 capacities, as I'm beyond proud to help be able to bring what we've created here today. Give Adrian another loud round of applause for the amazing work she's done here. Welcome to Day 4 of the Can-Can's Diversity Collective Inkwell Beach programming. Day 4 is focused on the power of partnerships, celebrating our sponsors that make all of this possible, also discussing the mentors and friendships and all of those other partnerships along the way that allow us to propel ourselves forward. And that's another reason why I'm really excited for today's conversation around the power of the pivot, talking about it through the tech, business, and faith lenses, sponsored by SPILL, a visual conversation app that is the de facto place to discuss and discover culture. SPILL is also the official social media sponsor of Inkwell. Let's give them another round of applause. And with that, let's play a little bit of a sizzle reel to learn more about SPILL.
Let me sip on that, because she did spill that.
Back on the road, chopping it slow. I go old, still been a pack on them, still been a pack and I'm stamming them mode. Don't be attacking it, peas on that grown chat on the mode. I might just tackle it. I'll be so glad to know it's go low. Don't even mack on it. People with don't hear 'em no more. T's not having it. I got these funk, but that's something.
All right now, okay. We trying to get the tea and have you spill a little bit more on that later. So you heard about our amazing panel that we have here today. We have the SPILL co-founder, Alphonzo Terrell. We have CultureBanx, which is a platform to redefining business, finance, and tech news for Black professionals, founded by Kori Hale. And then we have the amazing Reverend Dr. Danté. So let's dive in, because there's no better way to find out that when you're in a valley in your life, sometimes rejection is another way for redirection, and that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to get inspired by 2 Black founders and a Reverend. So let's start off with you, Fonz. SPILL was created due to a pivot and a disruption. Following the mass Twitter layoffs in October of 2022, you went from fired to funded in less than 3 months. In December of 2022, you and a group of ex-Twitter employees debuted the version of SPILL, a next-generation social platform centered on the Black experience. Yesterday's theme was about disruption. Today, again, we're talking about partnerships. Let's merge these. How was your life disrupted? We know it was due to the layoffs. And how did you take that moment and make it into something really empowering and build this amazing platform?
Yeah, thank you, Fran. And once again, shout out to everybody at Inkwell. Adrian, thank you so much. It's really surreal to be here right now. I worked at Twitter, as mentioned, but also in marketing for about 15 years at brands like HBO and Showtime. And I'd never been to Cannes, even though I had work nominated for it. And yet we are here today for a company that we started less than 6 months ago. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, I think many of you may have heard that there were some changes to a social media platform last year. I won't get into it. But the impact that it had that goes beyond the headlines is the human one, right? When half of our company, 3,700 people, were laid off, with basically no notice. I remember we were all on Signal the night of November 4th, kind of messaging each other like, what's gonna happen, who's gonna go, who's gonna stay, and you only knew if you got locked out of your email, basically. So we're all just like messing each other. It's horrible, right? And as we know, there's been so many layoffs, right? Not just in tech, but throughout the economy. And I think at that moment, two things happened for me, which I was honestly kind of surprised by. I think the first was I got incredibly clear. Like the minute it happened, I was like, I know exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna build. And I had no illusions about how hard it was gonna be. I was, ready to like sell my house and liquidate the 401k. I was like, we are gonna make something because first of all, some of the leadership that might have been taking over, I was like, there's no way they know more about this than us, number one. And number two, the biggest difference between them and us is just audacity. Just having guts to say, we're doing this.
Right.
And again, it's incredible because at that moment, there was no guarantee that any of this would happen, yet we're sitting here on this stage having this conversation with a platform that's really, really beautiful, and I'm really excited for all of you guys to try. By the way, these little QR codes here, SPILL launched in the App Store last week, but it's invite-only exclusive, so you guys get the exclusive. You just hit that QR code, punch in "get free" as the code, and you all get early access.
Woo, we trying to get free.
That's exclusive to Inkwell. We're really proud. Yes. Get in there. That's what I'm talking about.
I love that. Okay, well, Kori, we know you have gone from being a former CCDC ambassador to being a sponsor of one of this year's current ambassadors, the first in the program to do so. Let's do a huge round of applause for Kori. So at one point you were coming here networking on behalf of CCDC and eyes wide open, learning about CAN. Now you're paying it forward with somebody else. We know that CultureBanx is a multimedia organization really redefining business, finance, and tech news, really using for minorities through music. Tell us more about how that came to fruition, but also talk about how this inspired you and now how you're giving back.
Yes, I just also want to also shout out Adrian. Hey, Adrian, I love you. It's nothing but love. And being able to pay it forward, that's something that I feel in general as a culture, as a community, that we do in a multitude of ways. And to be the first to be able to do it, especially not just pay it forward at someone else's company, but my own company that I built, and us being able to do this is really monumental and a full experience, because we were at one point when we all came out here for the first year of Inkwell Beach Can, and we would be on the Crozet trying to get people to come in, saying, hey, come down here, like, see what we're doing, like, we have lunch. Like, come hang out with us. We literally used to do that. I mean, now, look, we got to push people away. But year one, that was not necessarily the case. And it's beautiful. And specifically, when it comes to my company, CultureBanx, there wasn't a space in mainstream media that was covering stock market-driven business news from a culturally attuned perspective. And that was very, very important, because there's so much that culture drives economically, financially, that we were being left out of, even though these massive companies were making billions of dollars off things that we were starting and creating in our community. And I thought, what if we started dropping some hip hop tracks with all of our articles, so that when big deals, for example, in the retail space, when Michael Kors bought Versace, why don't we just drop, Migos and Drake's Versace, and let the culture know the real role this M&A deal plays, and hip hop's longstanding love affair with Versace, helping to make them a more appealing acquisition brand for Michael Kors as they try to have a bigger stake in urban wear and street culture.
Absolutely. I'm going to want to go a little bit back and forth with you both, because I see a collaboration in the future. There's just so much synergy. Start with you, Fonz, and then we'll get to you, Dr. Quick. Talk to me about how you tapped into the Black community. Same with her. She's seeing this gap in major platforms. You work at Twitter, got it. She used to work at Bloomberg TV and CNBC. These major platforms not really fully embracing or understanding our culture, given just our demographics aren't strong in them. How do you tap into that a little bit further with your platform?
Yeah, 100%. I think anybody that used the platform that I will not name anymore before knows that the most powerful cultures on it were driven by Black culture, especially Black women, right? And I think statistically, we just take a moment, celebrate the Black women in your life. But even just from a business standpoint, beyond just knowing that we come from these communities and we want to support, obviously the incredible people that are connected to us directly, it's incredibly, it's not even controversial from a business standpoint that Black women drive the lion's share of content and culture online, particularly on social. Black women over-index on heavy social media usage and media consumption more than any other group, and they don't get built for, on top of the fact that Black women are getting the lion's share of hate on all of these platforms, as well as the queer community. And so that was the problem me and my co-founder had seen and talked about for years before any of the Elon stuff or anything happened. We were like, there really isn't people building for the solution and making this the central, focus of the platform. So while everybody else was like, oh, we need a new version of whatever, right? We were like, no, we're gonna build for a problem that cuts across all social platforms and frankly, all culture. And that's, can we create a safe space? Can we create a space that's fun? And can we create a space that rewards these creators who have been driving culture historically throughout American history? So that's where we started.
Makes sense.
And I think we're just about a week live, so it's early days, but as you guys, when you pop in, you'll see it's just been overwhelming to see that thesis being validated, right? When you just take a minute to listen and center, like the idea for like the colors that you guys saw, that came from feedback from our beta testers, right? They were like, what's this green and blue stuff? They were like, I want to be able to change my colors, and we made the colors different, we're doing different things like that. It's just listening. So I think that, especially with the insight that you just pulled out, it's a no-brainer. If you're not building for these audiences now, you're not future-proofing your business, you're going to be irrelevant.
It's just smart business. You nailed it. Kori, want to add to that?
I was going to say collaboration with SPILL and CultureBanx coming soon. Yeah, it's definitely going to happen. It is very important that we build specifically for our culture at the highest levels, because for so long we have been, to your point, technically been building, but we've been doing it on other people's platforms, which does not serve us in the end, because we're not able to recycle that money, that wealth back into our communities the way that we need to. And where we sit at CultureBanx, we call it innovation literacy. It's not financial literacy, because we're doing so much more than just talking about the broader financial space and where that's at. And so look, at the end of the day, the more people that are out here building for us, by us companies, that is when we're really going to start to see the needle moving on the wealth gap in our country.
Absolutely.
Can I have
that country be the U.S., sorry.
One last thing to that, too. I think the other piece of that is when we solve for our communities, when we build for our communities, it actually becomes solutions that benefit everyone,
Amen.
right? I think there's this concept that only because we are building for these communities and we come from them, that it's only for us.
Right.
But what white founders are dealing with that problem?
Right. Exactly.
Who would ever even bring that up to them in conversation? We are going to be available to everyone, but we're just centering these cultures, and it's going to be a safe place for all to come and participate.
Yeah.
And
Same with you.
I was just going to say really quickly, the other part of that is we have the right to tell our own stories. We have the right to make our own decisions. And I mean, me as like a Black-owned media publisher, and shout out to the Bomisi founders out here, Ranisha and Davon, I don't know where he is, but they have the right to tell our own stories on social media. We have the right to tell our own news narratives as well.
Absolutely. I love this, and I'm excited for this collaboration. So, Dr. Quick, we call you the Knowledge Whisperer. Your calm, cool, collected presence has been amazing this entire week, and your son, Alexander, is truly a gem. He's a CCDC ambassador this year. Alexander, you want to raise your hand in the audience? We'll do a little bit of a wave. Well done, Dad. Well done.
He's out in the water every morning with us.
Yes, HBCU student. So you are the senior pastor of First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens in Somerset, New Jersey. Your life in many ways has been about pouring into others and giving suggestions about redirection. Tell us a little bit about how that manifested in your life. How did you get to this place, and how are you using that to empower people?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to listen in on this dynamic conversation. I think this beach is really a testament to a number of things that we deal with in the business world and in our personal lives. And that is the problem and potential inherent in pain. And that within certain communities, we've been constructed around notions of pain. And how do we take that construction without having to be always resilient. I've heard that term used on a number of occasions. I think it's dangerous in some ways because it sends a message that you've always got to be strong. And that is a malady that's been placed on black women that helps perpetuate bad mental health. It's okay not to be okay. And we've got to make it okay for people to have moments where they're not okay. Because pregnant within each pain moment is possibility and progress. We never get there because we're always trying to avoid pain or act like it doesn't exist. And those types of things lead to trauma. And so my particular job, and people ask me all the time, why am I here? Besides supporting Adrian in this venture, I'm here because many corporations dehumanize their employees. They do it by giving them titles and job descriptions. And we act like those employees don't bring mama's death or childcare issues or divorce into the workplace. And when we dehumanize individuals by putting them in cubicles, we lessen our productivity and we create dysfunctional management styles. So my particular journey has been to help bring a new awareness to the complete individual that is within your entity and to have maintenance processes so that they're at maximum production.
I love that. And actually, you hit on something that we're going to get into right now is around mental health and how to deal with it and that resiliency piece. So, Fonz, we'll start with you. The night your team got fired, you talked about it a little bit earlier. No doubt emotions were running high. You talked about people not being able to say goodbye. So you turned to Twitter, the platform that you, in a lot of ways, helped build. Employees who unexpectedly lost access to Slack had a way to really be able to get together on that platform to process together through the Tweet Therapy Twitter space. And you're also a longtime practicer of Buddhism. Talk to us about, and I believe it's transforming poison to medicine is what you describe it. In a lot of ways what our Dr. Quick just described. Talk about using platforms to talk, gain clarity in tough situations. Talk about how Buddhism has helped you really overcome these really tough moments. We'd just love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, and thank you, Reverend, for what you're saying. I think just the last 3 years, to put it in context, has been incredibly difficult mentally and psychologically on everyone. But I think especially for communities of color in this country, dealing with, let's just call it what it is, lots of death, lots of loss, and that stuff builds. And we don't really, get socialized to have tools to like alchemize that without faith-based communities. And, my instance, and I know for you and other types of just friend groups or networks or community in general, which is so essential. 2 years ago, my father passed from COVID. He was also a preacher. And at that time, it was just this army of black women that came to my aid that I'd never even met, many of them at the time in my family. And it was so healing and powerful, and honestly is powering a lot of my energy for what we're building right now. But I also realized, just like to your point, how rare it is that that support gets returned, And I've practiced Buddhism for 20 years. It's Nichiren Buddhism. The whole concept behind that is you actually don't ever get to bring out your highest potential until you realize that you're going to be in service to others in some way. And that doesn't mean you sacrifice yourself. It's actually one and the same. You can't become your greatest self until you realize it's about service, right? And so at that moment when all these folks were getting laid off and my team is, everybody's freaking out and scared, we used Twitter Spaces at the time to, just kind of hold space, right? And it wasn't, at the moment, everybody probably wanted to be like, F this situation, or this is whack, or, and just from my experience, practicing Buddhism for many years and going through the process with my father, it was really just more about, let's take a moment to reflect on something that was really valuable for you, that you want to take forward. And it was incredible how it just kind of spread. Just that one little all right, don't ether yourself and screw up your severance package. Just share something that you're going to miss, And that kind of spread. And so we had I think about 15,000 people listening to this space. There was only about 400 employees in there. All this press jumped in there and everything, and they were like, can we do this again? So we ended up doing it about 6-7 times over the next 2 months. And people were just like, can we do a tweet therapy type of thing? And again, I think that's the power of what, and the promise of what tools like social, like news, like community, faith-based communities can do, particularly in a moment where we're all really struggling. There's some painful ish going on right now.
Totally.
But within that, when we can overcome that, and I think that was the thing that came out for me with my father too, it was about joy, especially black joy. There's no force more powerful in the world than black joy, because it's a triumph of humanity that everybody can connect to. So that's what we're building for.
Woo, we going to church, and we're going to get to the pastor to take us further to church right here. So maybe double down on black joy, double down on mental health, Dr. Quick, and how faith can be a critical role. He talked about Buddhism playing a big role in helping people really overcome these really tough moments in their life, to your point, feeling it and not trying to pretend it's not there, but looking towards a higher power to really help them cope.
Yeah, right now I'm involved with a $60 million campaign with the Ad Council that is focusing on black mental health and faith. As people of color, we come out of faith traditions. Africa and traditional African societies did not have a bifurcation between the secular and the sacred. Everything was sacred. And so in the West, we've tried to bifurcate our bodies from who we are internally. Stress, strain, struggle, eliminate our possibilities of being productive, of being creative. And when you look at a place like this, how many people are sitting out there watching us, but they're wrestling with internal demons? They're watching us, but they're trying to figure out how they're not going to lose their home. They're watching us, but they're worried about getting laid off next week. So they're looking, but they're not fully present. And often, we find ourselves physically in places and emotionally and psychologically partially absent. From those who hire and strategize and manage, you can't be a productive organization like that. And so black mental health and mental health for people of color, not just through COVID, but through George Floyd. When we look at technology, we know that people of color in the West are under the technology umbrella. We don't have access to technology like others do. And lastly, I would say, with a particular group like this, we don't talk about it as much, but what does it mean to be successful in a predominantly white world where now you're dealing with imposter syndrome? And now that you're here, who do you have to watch out for? For sometimes, it's not the other, but it's the person who looks just like you.
That part.
Who doesn't think you belong there, that you're in their spot. And so often you find yourself in a competitive situation with people who should be supporting each other. That's another level of stress. So not only do you have to deal with white supremacy, but you have to deal with internal black self-hatred.
100%.
All those types of things demand that you focus on your mental health.
Absolutely. Y'all preaching for real today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the haters in a bit, but we'll save that one for a little down the line. Kori, your roots are in TV. I talked about it, CNBC, Bloomberg TV. They say the hardest field is medicine. The second hardest is journalism. It's a beast. Round the clock, 24/7 sometimes. I mean, the news industry is 24/7, but in terms of the grind for humans to actually do the work, how do you sustain balance?
Balance is really hard, but I feel like I actually want to take up a collection because you were giving us a word. Like, I don't have any money on me. I don't have any euros on me, but I was like, we need to pass around the collection plate.
I'll take Cash App.
Okay.
But give us the Cash App information.
I think stillness, and it's funny that you mentioned that because when you put it that way in terms of hard fields, I'm like, gosh, I do always pick a hard field because what we did mention, I was an investment banker on Wall Street and actually in the UK. That's where I started professionally for about half a decade. So that was hard, male, white dominated. Then I moved to journalism, literally completely hard. And then I moved into entrepreneurship. I swear there's got to be an easier career field for me in my next life because I only picked the hard ones. But what I like to practice most is stillness, because it is significantly harder than you think to just stand still. And I will literally challenge myself to stand in my living room still for 5 minutes, like set Alexa 5 minutes, and see how long I can make it. And it is so difficult. But if I'm able to make it and go even longer, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I have so much clarity in my just mind, in my soul, in my focus. And let me tell you, when it gets hard, I have to get down on the good knees and ask God for some grace, right? For where I'm at. I have to give myself some grace and give other people grace, because there's a lot of power in extending grace to others.
Amen, amen. All right, well, we're going to talk a little bit about the tests and testimony. We talked about Black people really being cut from really tough times, but you also, Dr. Quick, talked about the dangerous terminology of really casting that resiliency of like always having to be strong. So talk about these intersections of faith and your studies around African American history. What can we do moving forward? We have to have some resiliency to face the world. You talked about white supremacy and all the things we built. We have to have that. That's what's allowed us to get us here. How do we understand that, but also, to your point, acknowledge the pain, not carry that burden wherever we go, because it could break us as well. So what is your advice in all of that, knowing how we got here?
James Noel, who's a professor of religious history, said that the African American was created between the moan and the shout. And by that he says when they were put on slave ships, they spoke hundreds of different dialects. We may make the mistake of watching Roots and thinking that when they got on slave ships, they all spoke the same language. They did not. They did not have one language. He said, but in the crucible of suffering, in the midst of death, they developed a common language. And he called that language the moan. And the moan was, I'm still here, though I'm struggling. And then he says, when they got off those ships, and late at night when they got out of the slave fields, they went to what they called hush hoppers, and they had church. He said, then they developed themselves in the shout. And he said, Black people are always between the moan and the shout. And so there are a few things that I think we have to help ourselves with that are personal practices of mine. As Black men, we have to put hyper-Western masculinism under our feet. We have to stop telling Black boys, men don't cry.
Right.
We have to be all right with being fully emotional creatures. A sign of strength is being able to live through your weakness. And so when I feel overwhelmed, my son makes fun of me from time to time. I like to watch Hallmark movies because I don't mind crying, you know. I will gush at a second. But scientifically, your tears contain hormones that are stress relievers. So if you don't cry, you're literally keeping hormones in your body that are killing you. The second thing is after you cry, you got to learn how to laugh. And so a place like Cannes gives a few of us moments of this extreme joy. That's why we party so good, right? We party hard because we go through stuff.
Right.
And so learning how to both laugh and cry and to be fully emotional human beings is important. The last thing I'll say about what has been said by my two panelists that I think is important is we can't get so caught up on the particularities of faith. Whether you are Buddhist or whether Allah is your God, all of these faiths have something that's really particular. You are more than your physical existence. Sitting still is a way of connecting with yourself and the divine in you. And we've had a lot of conversations about Black women. Black women suffer more than any other group in the world because they suffer from gender, race, and class. Therefore, if you learn how to dance with a Black woman, and you learn how to do poetry with a Black woman, you'll find joy in depths that you can't find anywhere else.
Ooh.
So,
Okay. Well, we gonna go to a black woman, Kori. Talk to us about adversity in this space, being a black woman, going through a lot of what Dr. Quick had described, and coming out on the other side. We know that you use faith. You talked about, standing still. What are some other things that you've used to really help you pivot?
One of the main things that I really used was community. So even, with what SPILL is doing, having a very strong community of people that have brought you to where you are and didn't even know that I needed to be in certain spaces. And I'm actually going to tell this story about how I met Adrian and how I ended up at CAN to begin with. It literally, just in terms of the community and black women supporting other black women, because we were at an event and we did not know each other literally maybe a month before CAN happened. I was there to raise money for my company. Adrian was there networking. We were both there networking. And I got up and kind of just said, what my company was doing. And afterwards, Adrian comes up to me and says, "Hi, you don't know me. Do you know about the Cannes Lions Festival?" And I said, "Yeah, I know. We used to cover it at CNBC. I know about it." And I was like, "But why are you even asking me about this?" And she said, "I'm doing this thing. It's called CCDC. We're going to have a beach set up, and I want you to come." And she said, "And I'm going to cover your expenses." And I was like, "Who are you, black lady? Who are you and what are you talking about?" So I did come 4 years ago, and it was life-changing. And that, to me, to your point about the test and testimony, I had no idea why I was here. And I remember at some point, we were praying over here one of the days, and I remember Adrian was crying I was dreaming about this, and it came to fruition. And for me, I feel the same thing in that testimony. I told my mother, who's in the audience, I was like, to see the CultureBanx logo here represented with so many other major brands, when I literally was just building, shooting in the gym, that is the testimony. And that's the full circleness, and that is the support of a black woman who we did not know each other from Adam.
That's amazing.
can I add one part to that? What I think is important about what's happening here is you can't gain without giving. And so many people try to do business simply through acquisition.
Yeah.
But when you do business through caring for other people, you actually make more money. If you put I have a staff of 40, we make a strong investment in the care of the staff. You make more money when you take care of other people. This whole beach is because Adrian decided, I want to help other people. And when you dedicate your life to building other people, but one thing we have to do as people of color, we can't build each other insecure. I can't be jealous of SPILL and build my thing. I can only build my thing by supporting SPILL. And I hope that we all leave this place with non-competitive success.
Ooh.
We have to leave this place knowing that I'm only as strong as what I can give to other people. And the more I invest in you, the more comes back to me.
Oh, I love that.
So I celebrate Adrian in making sure that all of these students and people come to CAN.
Absolutely. Well, let's keep with the theme of community in the test and the testimony. There's a lot of community on this platform. We got the baddies of SPILL, the zaddies of SPILL, the spillionaires, the Spillman grads, the Wake Up and Spill. Talk about community and how, you had even brought up the tweet stuff earlier, how that is actually helping bridge the gap and help people when they're going through really tough moments through these various channels.
Yeah, well, again, I just want to say thank you both. This panel's popping. I don't know. We need to syndicate this. This is encouraging. Yeah, I think to the point about communities, especially for underrepresented or underserved groups, right? Communities is born out of necessity. It's a survival tactic first and foremost, right? Like the black church. Again, my father was a preacher, and he in the limited time we had to connect to each other, that's kind of was the anchor of his entire life. It's where he met, his partners in life. It's where he found his music, love for music. It's where, he got to understand the neighborhood. And I think building a platform in the digital space, right? And as was mentioned earlier, we've been carving out communities and elbowing our way into spaces, forever, right? IRL, URL, whatever. And so to me, it's not even that radical that something like Spill should exist. In fact, I think many different versions of this need to exist because we are masters at creating community out of necessity, right? It's the only way to survive, and many other marginalized groups feel the same way. And so I think what's been fun is to see, especially for the groups we're building for, black women getting on there and doing sort of self-declared expressions of flavor and flyness, the baddies, and of course the fellas was like, oh, we got to get in. So then the zaddies came, and when you guys pop into the platform, you'll see, look at the little hashtags, have some fun. I see some baddies and zaddies in the audience. I look forward to seeing you.
If you a baddie and a zaddie, raise your hand.
On the timeline. But I think... Yes, exactly. Ben, stand up. Show him what a zaddy looks like. Show him. So look at this beautiful brother. Look at this beautiful zaddy right here.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Come on now. But it's been, I think, also humbling because there's been moments like I found out about Tina Turner's death from Spill. I found out about the submarine conversation, which I know is, never want to mock people whose lives, in jeopardy, but through this platform and the conversations that we're having with it. And I think that's so incredible in such a short period of time and just a reflection of who we are as people. And I think that just only grows in value, and especially as, other groups come to the platform and sort of share their experiences and what information they have. It's exactly what the Reverend is saying. It actually lifts all boats. And I wanted to say one thing about that too. We have so many incredible partners here that Adrian has brought together for Inkwell. We have, Group Black, all the other incredible sponsors. We need to be sharing information with each other, right? If anybody wants to know how we raised $3 million in 3 months after getting fired, and now I'm able to offer full-time employment to 7 people on 3 different continents, talk to me afterwards. I'll give you my whole blueprint. This ain't about secrets. This ain't about gatekeeping, because we need to increase the size of the pie. The way white supremacy plays out in business is you guys get this much. They say black media is a $27 billion business in the United States. That sounds like a big number. Guess what the global, just social and advertising business size is? $486 billion. We cannot be satisfied with just being put in this box of multicultural means minimal. That absolutely has to change, and that's only going to happen if we're sharing information with each other and we coordinate.
You just inspired me to ask this question, and we'll get to the partners a little next. A lot of my work in DE&I, it's obviously at the intersections of humanity. That's the biggest piece. At the end of the day, it's about connecting from a human perspective. And sometimes when you're working with people to get them to understand the importance of this work, they don't see the ROI. I just hit them with the facts. I just hit them with the numbers, with what you just brought. You can call whatever you want, but what I'm telling you is globally, people of color are the majority. And pretty soon in the United States, we are also going to be the majority. Take a look at our spending power. Good luck to you if you don't understand our cultures. If you can't literally speak our languages, you're not going to be able to reach us. And I know y'all like that bag. So good luck to you trying to get that bag if you don't have the people on your team that represent these communities to really understand it. If you want to get the money, make sure you get some people on your team that are from these communities. This isn't rocket science. So at least for you two, I'd be curious if you can go back and forth and talk to us. How is it working with advertisers? And did you just hit them with the facts? You need me. You need me. Good luck to you.
Let me tell you, we are always trying to work with advertisers, agencies, sponsors, and we do have to run through it. And I love that you brought up some of those numbers, and I want to run those down for our audience right now, because that spending power that you're referencing, that'll be $1.7 trillion by the year 2030. That makes the African American community alone, their GDP, larger than the entire country of Mexico. It would make them the 5th largest GDP in the world.
Wow.
So as an advertiser, as a brand, how is it that you can even try to sidestep getting directly in front of what is going to be the 5th largest GDP in less than 7 years. Like, that's impossible. And most importantly, you can't do that without authenticity. So you have to have those people on your team, and you have to be working with the Black-owned businesses that are already culturally, innately connected to this community. And it has not been easy. I was telling some of the current ambassadors at the CCDC house a couple of nights ago, I was like, look, when we were out here in 2019, we were literally shooting in the gym. This is pre-pandemic. This is pre-George Floyd. All of that, like, diversity in the way that is represented across the world is not the same way that it is in the US. So there was a lot of teaching and education. There's still a lot of that that's going on right now. There are wins for sure that have happened, but it should not be, to your point about multicultural being minimum. We should be getting the same slice of pie size, if not bigger, based on our cultural contributions.
Absolutely.
And I just want to plus on that. I think it's got to be bigger. I think that's the point. Particularly when we're talking about our audiences, right? Because especially when it comes to advertising, right? It's like numbers game. Give me a CPM, give me a CPC, all this type of stuff, right? Which is based on a system that assumes that all people are equally investing themselves in these platforms. How can you value someone who is spending 3+ hours, 6 to 8+ hours on a platform, creating all of the trends, the virality, all the things that you're chasing as a company, the same as, you know, someone who's not,
right.
You know?
Right.
Like, if you walk into Tiffany's and you see something that is a rare diamond, are you going to pay less for it because there's only one of them?
Right.
No, you're going to pay more for
Right.
it. And especially when we have the business metrics to prove it. And yes, build for the future is the other thing I want to shout out too. In the United States, everyone under 42, the majority are non-white. It's Black, it's Hispanic, it's Asian, it's all these other groups. If you are not building and investing for these groups, you are not future-proofing your business. Same thing with the queer community. 7% of the US identifies as queer in some way. Guess what percentage of Gen Z identifies as queer? 20%. You better get some folks on your team. You know, you better figure this out. You better talk to these audiences. They are defining the future of all types of culture and media, every single product. And I don't think it's got to be, you know, we don't even need to have the back and forth about the, you know, the value conversation. We just need the commitments. Put it on your media plans. Make it a non-negotiable. Come work with us. We'll make sure you get your ROI and grow with these audiences and watch yourself win in 5, 10, 20 years from now.
Yes, speak on it. We love it. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about partnerships and how partners have helped you elevate and get to this space. We'll start with Dr. Quick, and then we'll just go down the line of, like, who do you want to shout out? A lot of you have been repped by a lot of organizations. We know we're all partners here, too. But I'm curious, Dr. Quick, what are your thoughts about, you touched a little bit on, like, community, but partners in a lot of ways are another form of community, of pushing you to get to where you need to be, helping you in those tough times, too.
Yeah, I think in my particular position, I'm careful about forming partnerships. We have 6,000 members. Every week there are about 14,000 viewers. And I think when we talked about advertising to them, my qualms is not only if you have the right people advertising, but what's the source of your product? We know Martin Luther King, when he died, asked the question, have I brought my people into a burning house? Are we supporting companies and products that are not just investing in people who are selling to us, but investing in the communities we live in? So it's great that Black people help sell a particular product, but when I'm in a food desert, or when I have no mental health care, or all the structural things that have come against people of color, what organizations are investing dollars into those communities that are spending this money? I think we have to ask the questions about who's good corporate citizens. So that's one of the questions I ask, right? And so, say in the state of New Jersey, we're partnering with Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, the largest medical system in New Jersey. And we're asking, if Black women are still suffering in America with the highest infant mortality rates, how is Johnson & Johnson coming to the table? How is Procter & Gamble coming to the table? How are any of the groups in which we buy a lot of the products being problem solvers? So I have a vetting process because people are always trying to get to my members. Because what other place can you find Sunday morning in America is still at 11 o'clock the most concentrated time to find black people? And if you are not aware of that, meet a man named T.D. Jakes. Black media is now trying to pay attention to faith institutions more than ever in history. And post-pandemic, people are turning to faith in larger numbers than before. So if you're not clear about the role faith communities play in certain communities of color, then you're losing a large audience. And so we got to ask ourselves, are the people who are advertising to us, even black people, willing to invest in us?
No, that's a good call out. And it's also understanding, to your point, where do you actually send the information? Because they might think, oh, I'm going to put it maybe on a social platform, which is important, but also you need to be in both spaces. It's not just on one platform. You actually have to go to the barbershop. You actually have to meet them in the community. It's not just one platform. So that's really good advice. Curious, Fonz and Kori, how do you think about partnerships and who's supported you?
Right, so partnerships are, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. And the way that we look at it at CultureBanx, it can't be just because you have the advertising dollars right now, just because you have the sponsorship dollars. To your point, Reverend, it is about what are you doing for the black community as a whole, because that is who we're trying to reach. That is, we are trying to activate economic, not just equality, equity across the board. And that is most important to us through the work that we do with our news platform. I will say some of the partners that we've had, they range, right, from investment banks like UBS, like JP Morgan, all the way to auto brands like General Motors, to consumer tech brands like Lenovo. And the thing about all of these partnerships and deals that we have done across the spectrum is it can't just be you're going to support the activation, the event, whatever the full campaign looks like. It's what is your company actually doing? When you're not working with CultureBanx because I was able to get in with the right person who heads the right division, how else are you supporting the work that's being done in our community? And we ask all of those questions up front because all money is not good money.
That part.
And it's okay to leave some of it on the table if it's not going to further your cause.
Ooh, speak on it.
Yeah, I got to plus all that. We're so new, and we were blessed to have a lot of partners come to the table before we even launched. So when we launched last week, we had our first major advertiser, Lionsgate Films, promoting the blackening, using our first ad products. And, you know, people were like, it's crazy. You just launched your platform. How are you doing social advertising already? And truthfully, I was like, I cannot guarantee you a specific set of CPMs or whatever it is going to be. But what I could tell them was we have spent most of our lives, but especially the last 7 months, curating the first people to be on this platform. You know, a lot of the people who are in this room, my guy Wells right here, who's DJing over at the Meta, you know, suite, you know, Ben, who you saw, the Zaddy of Spill ambassador over here, you know, all these incredible people who have influence in their life in a number of different ways, because a lot of the advertising space is sort of spray and pray,
right.
Whereas you come to us, this is curated already. People talk about creator economy.
Right.
People talk about all these things. This is it. We actually built it for you from scratch. It's built into the platform.
Right.
So we just needed to put a price on that, a premium on that, to make sure that it's valued properly. So I want to give credit to Lionsgate. If y'all ain't seen The Blackening yet, go get it. It's in theaters right now. A lot of fun to go do. And Variety and BET have come to the table, and a lot of others are in discussion with us as well. But I think, again, the number one thing that we're seeing is the need to come up with a different framework to value the impact of culture drivers on these platforms, wherever they may be, IRL, URL, in the journalism space, all these things, because it's not all equal. And I think this notion, particularly in our space, for premium social, right? You got your Walmarts and your Kmarts, you know, whatever that might be. I won't name them. But let's talk about the HBOs, right? Like, we don't have any of that yet, and that's really how we see Spill.
Absolutely. Well, I did want to get to our haters portion, but I wanted to at least give the audience a couple minutes, so let's maybe do a little bit rapid fire. So this section is called Don't Let Your Haters Distract You. So tell us all, how do you no doubt have dealt with a lot of hate with being two black founders in a space, talk about black women, really underfunded in this space. faith in a lot of ways can be a deterrent against factors. And then I love this. Psalm 23:5 says, well, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. So your enemies are going to watch you rise, but you can't get distracted by them. So I'd love just some quick tips. How do you focus on yourself when the hate comes? Oh, you're not going to be able to compete with Twitter. Oh, you're not going to be able to do that. Oh, a black woman owning, a media platform. Good luck with that. Good luck with the funding on that. You're not going to be able to do that. How do you shun that and keep it moving, and then not overgloat when your haters are seeing you in real time? So go ahead, Kori.
I was just gonna say with the haters, especially in the things that I do and the things that I've done, to me it's very simple, especially when they don't understand, because the haters come in all forms, even on the funding side, the investing side, the regular people in your ecosystem. Is when they're giving you the no, the word N-O, I turn that word into no, K-N-O-W. They just don't know enough about your greatness.
Okay.
And that, you move forward with that. So whatever you're getting these no's, I'm like, okay, they just don't know. Like, that's fine. They're telling me no, but I really understand that they don't know. And it's going to be their loss in the end. And keep it pushing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just say I think everything is fuel. When you're in Buddhism, there's a metaphor we talk about flight, right? When you look at a bird or you look at an airplane in the sky from far away, it looks like this peaceful, serene, like gliding. It's like almost magical. But when you're actually up close, it's like, wind's blowing in your face, and it's like, oh my God, the turbulence, and it's like that. It's pretty intense and scary. That's what it's like, obviously, to be a founder or to do anything in this space that's like new and fresh. But that resistance is fuel. You couldn't fly without the resistance. So not that I welcome, the haters. It's a given fact, but it's fuel for me. Like, it's just fuel, and it's going to help us get higher and higher, and that's what's been happening so far.
Absolutely, Dr. Quick.
I've got a couple of sayings. One, eagles don't fight with pigeons.
Ooh, we don't.
Because eagles fly higher than pigeons. Don't get distracted by pigeon people. I tend to think that if somebody's not paying attention to you, it's because you're not doing anything. And the more you're doing, the more it's going to attract two types of people. People secure enough to support you and grow with you, or people who are hurt inside that can't stand your growth. Either way, where you spend your energy will articulate what your values are. And I've learned that whether it's being an African American Christian who says one group can't be free without the other group. You can't be free and black and Baptist or anything else and be against the freedom of LGBTQI people. If you're going to be free, everybody's got to be free. When you take ethical positions, there will be people angry at you. God didn't create you to focus on little people. God created you to focus on big things. And so I tend not to give a lot of energy or be competitive with people who aren't in my world. I can say sitting here, I want to do business with Fonz because there's a peace and security about him that's attractive. I want to do business with her because there's a clarity, and her mama exudes that clarity. We have to stop seeking money in partnerships and seek security in partnerships. Ooh. When you seek security, you don't have to worry about what's being said in the meeting when you walk out the room.
Ooh.
You can trust the person in the room once you walk out. And I watch a lot of the politicking here at Cannes. Some people need to leave your room. So my last piece of advice is, I don't need friends. We're looking for acceptance when we need to look for respect. When you have respect, acceptance comes.
Ooh, that's a word, that's a word.
Love yourself enough where you don't need anybody else to love you.
Absolutely. Do we have one quick question? Anybody in the audience? It's got to be rapid fire. If not, I'm going to just go to my final rapid round. Okay, no questions. Hills and valleys, one of your biggest takeaways from the valley, and what did it teach you that you really use today? I talk a lot about being in foster care. It cut me, it molded me, dealt with a lot with abandonment, but I think it was my testimony to really be able to give back and be an example for foster youth often that don't make it out of the system. I have 2 degrees from UC Berkeley. 3% of us have an advanced degree in the system. And so that's my testimony of what I took. So quick rapid fire, in the valley, hills and valleys of life. What's your take? What's your advice?
Yeah, the first one again that comes to mind is just my father, who I didn't meet until I was 20 years old. And when he got COVID, I moved out to North Carolina and took care of him for 3 months as he made his transition. And that was the hardest, darkest part of my life, but it was also the most beautiful because it helped really ground me in my own personal identity and gave me the conviction that nobody can tell me what I am. I know exactly what I'm here to do, and let's go do it.
We love it.
Gosh, hills and valleys, really, really quickly. I think growing up, not having the greatest relationship with my father, and making sure that I did not ever succumb to the struggles that he dealt with while he was alive throughout his whole life. But one of my biggest things in the turnaround from that, bringing me up to the hill, really the mountaintop, was that self-awareness, that respect, so that when you go into the room, everybody already knows who you are.
There we go.
I think mine, I'm dyslexic. I was 16 before I could tie my own shoes. I was functionally illiterate through 5th grade. From that, I have degrees from Princeton and Berkeley and Morehouse. I've learned that other people's label for you is not your determinant factor. Learn to label yourself and live in it.
Oh, I love this. Well, that's all our time. The power of the pivot. I hope you learned a lot in this session because there are so many gems. Thank you for having us, and have a fantastic
And props for our amazing moderator,
Yes.
Fran. Great job.
Thank you.